Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. Hi, this is Julie Hendrick as the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I am really delighted to welcome Clay Stafford to the podcast this week. Clay is an American best-selling and award-winning author, poet, screenwriter, and playwright, film and television producer, director, showrunner, actor, book, film, and stage reviewer, as well as a public speaker. He sold nearly 4 million copies of his books overall and has had his work distributed in 16 languages. He's founder and CEO of the annual Killer Nashville International Writers Conference and a contributor to Writer's Digest magazine with his monthly online column, Killer Writer. In addition, Clay is the founder of the BalancedWriter.com, a creative online learning platform for writers. All of this information is in the show notes, but now we're going to get to the conversation. Clay, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. And you know, the one thing it comes down to, all of that you said, is just storytelling. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today, right? Storytelling.
Yes. But well, we're going to talk about that because it's about storytelling, but it's also about more. and I think you would.
Well, I'll let you lead the way.
Well, I'm going to start where I always start. When did you first say to yourself, "I want to write a novel," or "I want to write whatever you started with"?
Well, you know, I started very young. I am from Appalachia background and rural Appalachia, in some spots relatively poor Appalachia. And we fit that stereotype of storytellers sitting on the porch. My grandmother basically raised me, and we sat on the porch and I heard stories after stories after stories. And my dad is convinced that some of them weren't true, but my grandmother was convinced that they all were true. So for me, I thought they were all true and I wanted to hear them over and over. So stories were always a fascinating part of my life. And then when I got into fourth grade, of all things, I was already writing. My second grade teacher had said that we had to write a story about something about bravery or something like that, and she said everybody turned things in, and I turned in a 3-page story, even in second grade. So when I got to the fourth grade, my teacher, the music teacher / drama teacher / because teachers have all these everything, the most overworked people in the world. And she said she connected me, and I got my first short story published when I was 10 and got $20 for it. Wow. And I thought that was a pretty cool gig. And I think just, and I started as a kid actor as well. So I traveled a great deal to New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta. And in all of those travels, there's a big dichotomy between, say, Manhattan and your grandmother's house, where we've got an outhouse and no running water and everything else. And it's just making sense. And I think even at my age, I'm still writing, trying to make sense. And I think that's what it all comes down to, telling the story behind that and trying to find some sort of thing that makes sense completely. So to answer your question, when did I start? I think I have always had an attraction to stories. And I've got an eclectic background where I've worked in a lot of different functions, totally creative, totally behind the scenes, helping other writers and other projects develop everything from publishing to, as you know, film, television stuff. The story itself, whether it's a 30-second commercial or a full-length film or a 6-part series or a book series or whatever, it all comes down to just that love of storytelling, whether I'm telling the story or other writers are telling the story, which leads us then to the whole educational thing where I am looking at encouraging other writers to tell their stories. And so, and that runs the gamut. And I think just the tenet of what I have is everybody's story is so special. Every single story needs to be heard. And there are going to be people who don't like it. And that's just too bad for them, not for you. And I want to encourage all of those people to do that. So I was an Appalachian kid who then worked, Universal Studios, worked for a lot of great people, worked with a lot of great people. And it's been quite a trek for me. I've always loved education. And I've always loved teaching and encouraging. And I got to do everything, not because of my own talents, because their talent is everywhere. And there are so many talented people. But the things that I've gotten to do were because somebody reached their hand down and pulled me up. And organizations like Sisters in Crime provide resources where you can network and meet with people and they can pull you up. And everybody in this community, as you well know, Sisters in Crime is so giving with their feelings and their support for each other that it is a nurturing incubator for all of us. And so it wasn't really my talent that propelled me. It was the fact that somebody said, here's this, funny kid from Appalachia, and he seems like he has a little bit of possibilities and he's willing to work. And they gave me that opportunity. So my whole life has been that trajectory of creating, of helping people create their visions, and then also helping people create their careers as well, and all centered around telling a story, whatever that story is, whether it's a poem, a short story, a film, a play, whatever.
So much to unpack there, and we're going to unpack it.
I'm sorry, I get verbose.
No. I love the passion and the vision, but I also, and I agree with you that, it's about people lifting other people up and sort of giving them the tools. But Clay, not everybody takes the tools or learns them. And, there's the craft of all of the things that you've done, right? That you need to understand story structure. Everyone can tell a story, but sometimes they can't tell it well. and
that's true. Well, sometimes even after you do it, I just told my wife yesterday, I said, I've been doing this for decades. You'd think this would become a lot easier than it is. But
right.
we all run into those walls. And, I think every creator needs to know that you're going to run into a wall. And really, that's just your brain telling you there's something better if you'll just stop and listen. I remember this is some Appalachian kind of juju coming into the situation, but my grandmother went very small all the way up, would always say, whenever you got that confusion there, if you just sit and get quiet and listen to the wind, because we lived where the fields and the sagebrush and everything were going by, she said, you'll get the answer. And so whenever I get to that point that you're talking about, not writing well, and I want to make that point to everybody who's listening or watching, we all don't write well at times. And some of us, not like me, we don't write well most of the time, but we get our words in. But, my wife says, how many words did you do today? I said, maybe I did 2,000 words and I wrote 10 really good ones. And that's it.
Well, again, the story about your grandmother, I think, is such a great lesson and was likely a very good lesson for you in that I had an Irish grandmother, so similar stories in that.
Hello, fellow Irish lady. Hello, because I am as well.
Because you'd hear her stories and they were her truth, but they weren't always based on the facts, right? I mean, and that's such an important thing as a writer to understand that what you're telling is a truth that is from a point of view, and this point of view, you were able to step back and go, all right, I love her. She's telling me a story and I'm observing that instead of just listening or whatever. You were looking at how she was structuring it, how she was keeping you involved, what she was telling people. You'd meet the people from the story and go, oh, I know way too much about this person.
Exactly.
She used to take me to church. It's like, I should not know this much about you. And weird stuff like,
Yeah.
his first wife did this, and Grandma, I shouldn't know this.
I'm 9 years old. I don't need to hear this.
I know. What are you doing here? And also as an actor, that I was never a performer, but I worked in theater for many years, and that the skills of an actor of observation and non-judgmental, looking at characters and what makes this person tick, and not judging that, just saying this is who they are, these are their issues. I mean, I'll try to be better people, but you need to understand all that. And so you had all of that from an early age.
Yes.
But then how you're going to tell your stories and how you're going to structure them so that people want to listen or become engaged. How did you hone the craft of structure and really learning how to create stories that compel people?
Well, I am one of those writer every day guys, and I've written an awful lot. And I would say 90% of what I've written is not very good. And I don't even try to get anyone to look at it, because I can tell from dealing with, developing other writers' things. I mean, a good editor, you put on your editor hat and you go, that was a good first draft, but we're not going to show that one to anybody. And so I think the solution is to be around creative people. Solution is to read or view an awful lot, or listen if you want to do audiobooks, and then to write every single day, just because I was also a music composition and arrangement major in college, and my instrument was piano. Well, they tried to get us to play everything, but you don't want to hear me on a woodwind or anything like that. It's awful, absolutely awful. But when you try to all of those things going together, you do it poorly, so you can eventually do it decently. And I think that's the structure of what you're talking about in the question of learning how to write well does not come naturally. You have to develop it, like at the university when I was playing the piano, and say you do it every single day, and you have to do it every day, because you kind of lose your chops if you even skip a day. So I'm one of those who never skips a day. I write every single day, and I don't ever. I am on some deadlines right now, but I mean, that's just a part of our life, right? But I don't ever sit down and write and think about publication. That's for later. That's down the road in a discussion with my agent. I sit down and write what I feel needs to be said. And then, as I say, some of it doesn't fit in what's going on. Some of it's not said as well as it could have been said. But I sit down and write what needs to be said that day. And that's as far as that I really want to go. And you do that enough times, and you read your work, and then you read the skilled people who are actually writing, and you go, oh, they did it so much better, and you learn that way. And it's just trial and error and experience with, I think, the love of not publication, not fame, not fortune, the love of that story or poem or whatever it is that you're writing. That's the most important thing, and that's the reason that I get up in the morning and go straight to my computer and start every single day.
So you are a person, I know others who is just music and acting and writing and everything else. Let's talk about your writing process. First of all, talk to me about crime fiction. What drew you to crime fiction?
There were a lot. I could come getting personal reasons, which I'm going to share with you. I'm not keeping anything private. I'm open as a book. But I come from a family of bootleggers. Come from a family that there have been a lot of murders relating in our family. There have been some there's been some people who were killed. Somebody very close to me was killed. And the police did not investigate because he was a drunk. And that seemed to sum it up for everybody, that in terms of investigating, was he worth investigating? No, he was a drunk. But he was also the guy that I walked down the railroad tracks for about 15 minutes, got off in a long field, walked across the field, and went to his trailer and got him out of bed. 5 years old. His name is Harvey Beavers. Got him out of bed, got him up, and I scrambled his eggs. I had to go out in the back and get the eggs, scrambled his eggs, gave him that. And he always told me, he said, Clay, don't ever do this to your body. Don't ever do this to your body. And I was close to him all of that time that I went through the early teenage years. And then he was shot in the head, and nobody felt, this man that I knew and loved and cared for, this man, nobody felt was worth seeking justice for because he was a drunk. Now, I can tell you numerous stories that happened in that environment. If you talk to, say, the TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, or FBI agents in this area, Eastern Tennessee is not an area that they ever relish going into, because Eastern Tennessee has a mentality of its own. It is an independent area unto itself, and they take care of their own issues in ways that they feel appropriate to take care of those issues. And as a child, I can remember seeing people being in the truck where somebody, and I won't say names now, but truck where an adult, went out because somebody didn't pay their bill, and they pulled them out of their house and just beat them near death in the front yard. It's all of that violence. And then that question of why, and that question of justice. And is there such a thing as justice in that? And so with that early thing mixed with the storytelling, as I said, writing is great therapy. You're trying to make sense of all of this stuff that you have. And so where did I enter into crime fiction? I lived in crime reality. And so it was a natural leap for me to go into mysteries. Who killed Harvey? To, thrillers. How am I going to get away from this person? This person's shooting at me. I mean, I've got a spot right here where somebody shot me. And so you grow up in that environment, and you have those experiences, and you can't help but feel like, if you've got a questioning nature, that overwhelming why. And so how did I get drawn into crime fiction, or even crime nonfiction? How did I get drawn into crime literature? It's because it was where I was, and I went there to try to understand.
Yeah. Well, and you already talked about storytelling and other people's storytelling, but it also feels like you were given a gift at a very young age of being able to try to make sense of this world that you were in, right? Through storytelling.
I think I was very fortunate. I think there are my son is at university right now, and there's so many people there who are like, I'm getting a business major. I have no clue what I want to do, but I have always known from the very beginning that I wanted to tell stories, and that's all that I wanted to do, whether it was with my 8mm camera, black and white, no sound, just
back in the
old
day.
time. Back in the day, I did that, and I typed on a typewriter. We did mimeograph sheets. I had my own little newspaper that I sold for, I don't know, 5 cents or something like that when I was in elementary school, and I wrote essays and stuff for that. And I just knew really that I just really wanted to communicate, and I wanted to share. And I think that that's where my writing and stuff still is, that I really think the essence of really good writing is communicating and sharing things that are not necessarily comfortable to share. I'm an eclectic reader. I read a lot of things. Some of them, I just did an interview with someone who did transgressive literature, and it's very dark and it's uncomfortable for me. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I was squirming. I was uncomfortable. I was out of my zone. And yet I was experiencing these people portrayed so realistically that I welcomed them into my brain, and they have become, a part of who I am. And the writer is incredible in doing that. And so I think that it's those stories from all of these different backgrounds, from all of these different people, some who are able to express easily, and then some people who are not in a position where they feel comfortable expressing who they are, what they think, what they've seen, what their experience is. And for me, I feel like, my little place in heaven, my ticket in heaven when I get there is the fact that I listened, I encouraged, I loved, I respected your story, whatever your story happens to be. And I think that the greatest accolade in my life, probably, and I do feel this way, between publications or hearing someone get their first story published, seriously, for me, I've had wonderful experiences and some decent credits, and that's been nice. But the most important thing for me now is the people and the individual people. So nothing makes me happier now than hearing that somebody that might not previously have been able to get their voice out there, but because of like our Claymore Awards that we do with Killer Nashville for the 50 pages of unpublished thing, the judges looked at it and they validated that, yes, you do have a great story. It's off the beaten path. It's not going to resonate with some audiences at all. But you know what? It's a story that needs to be told. And that's really the thing that jazzes me up the most, is being able to be a part of that. And as I said, I think if there's any little ticket that I'm ever going to have to go to, go to heaven, that's going to be my ticket, is that I did care, and I did listen, and I did encourage.
Yeah. I'm fascinated because you work in so many different genres and ways. When you have an idea, when you're percolating an idea, I talk about it, the gravitational pull of an idea. We all have something we read or someone we meet, and you think, and then all of a sudden other stuff starts coming together. It's like, okay, this is an idea. Do you automatically say, no, this is the book, or this should be a play, or this is this, or can you form an idea into something? Does that make sense? You think, you work in so many different fields that it's like, oh, this is a book, or no, this should be a play, or this should be a movie, or...
Yeah, no, to me, and I know every writer probably works differently, but to me, every idea that comes to me already has its media in place, and I know what it's going to be. I mean, when a haiku hits you, you know that it's going to be 3 lines, and
Right.
that's all it's going to be is 3 lines. And then I think the greatest surprises for me is always thinking of a book. One of the projects I'm working on right now is a book that then I realized it doesn't fit into a book. It has to be 2 books. Then it morphed into 4 books. Now it's 6 books. So I'm working on a 6-book series right now. And I think those are the surprises and the developments that come to me, is the expansiveness of the idea once it starts building up. But in terms of what media, to me, it comes to me because I say probably that's because I've been around a long time, and you get something, and immediately this is going to be a repartee, a dialogue story, or something. So immediately that's either going to be a stage play or it's going to be a film. Then you're going to go. The next question is, what is it? Well, if it's got airplanes, it's certainly not going to be a stage play, so it's going to be a film. So I mean, that's how it narrows down.
Yeah.
It narrows down really quick as to what it's going to be. And then, the question after you go through all that is very important: is this idea really good enough to spend, the next 6 months or 3 years or however long it takes to get this project developed? And so, but I think everything comes to me pretty much preformed. And it's almost like if you've cooked a long time, you get just that idea of how everything is going to throw together real quick, and what it says. And then some of the stuff you do, ahead of time, and this is not meant to be demeaning, but ahead of time, if it's barbecue here in the South, you may get paper plates, but if it's going to be something special, maybe a steak or something, you're going to get on the white china.
Yeah.
And so I think the media itself really just determines is based upon the elements that are intrinsic in that media. And when you've worked in that different media enough, sardines are not going to go in barbecue. Sardines have their own beautiful, wonderful place where they're going to go. They get crackers and hot sauce, So I think to answer your question, everything comes preformed to some degree, and I know there's other people who probably work differently, but that's how I work. It's expeditious. How's that?
I have learned not to assume anything. From our conversation so far, I'm assuming that you can work on many things at the same time. But is that true?
That is absolutely true, and I have to because I'm running Killer Nashville. We started up the Balanced Rider. I've got other businesses that I run, entertainment related, that I run. So I have to put that CEO cap on, and then I've also got to write. And then and when I'm writing several different projects. I may be working on a spec option script here. I may be working on a nonfiction book here, and then a fiction thing here, and then a short story for the Boucher Khan anthology over here, and that kind of thing. And so I've got multiple projects going on, and I don't know. It's more of I think this is a good takeaway, that I work on a project as long as I am in that zone working on that project. If I find myself drifting out of that zone, I go to something else and pick it up and take it to the point there. But what's happening is it's not a juggled attention span that's going on. It's that realization that I'm running up into something, and I need I think we all have that powerful subconscious that we need to rely on and listen to. And so I step away and go to another project, and that keeps me working all the time, because I'm working on this, then I work on this, and then I go back over here to this. But it's because things are percolating in the head before I come back to it because I've run into some sort of wall. So I don't have writer's block, and I've never had writer's block. I've had writer's lack of time. There's just not enough time in the day, and and I'm not alone in that. So I jump around pretty much to multiple projects, and I'm able to keep those in my head. And I don't think that's for everybody. I know a lot of writer friends who are really, they want to work on one thing and be totally focused in it and stuff. But sometimes I just need that break. And that's part of what I've always done. I guess because I've worn so many different hats my whole life. I was fortunate in my early 20s to hop into Universal Studios in Los Angeles and start a wonderful, fun career in working behind the scenes there, as well as performing at the same time and writing at the same time. And so I think just having multiple hats has always been my norm, and I don't think I would know anything otherwise. But that doesn't hold true for all authors, and I think everybody needs to find their way in what they do.
Of course, I could talk about your Universal career, but we're not going to. We're here to talk about writing. You mentioned the book that became 3 books and now is up to 8? Did you say
6 books?
6. So, did you sit there and say, okay, do you plot? Did you think this is too big a story, I'm going to break it up? Was it at the end of the first book that you said, I have to deconstruct and start again? Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I think, again, it goes back to it being at a very early age, I think, in storyboard.
Okay.
That's very filmic, right? I think in storyboard. And so for me, you say, are you a plotter or a pantser? Well, no, I think in storyboards, but I rearrange storyboards all the time. And I worked for someone who taught me that you just take your office and you load the storyboards across the office, and you just run that story over and over and over again, and that's out of place. And you mentally are writing it as you're doing that through the storyboard. And I've got the proverbial storyboard in my Word document. That's how I write. So my problem has always been time. I got a program for a great documentary idea, but it can only be 48 minutes long, and I got enough material to cover maybe 200 minutes. And so that means it's going to have to turn into, I'm going to have to take it and go, okay, where are the defining places where they can be broken up that makes sense with a climax at the end to bring them back to see the next installation of what's going on. And a lot of my influence is coming from television, right? So, commercials, back when there were commercials, though commercials are coming back now, but they call them, like ads or whatever, and you can pay extra to get rid of your ads. But there's commercials now. But there was a time when services first started streaming that they did away with commercials. But when I was starting out, commercials terrified me because I knew you could get up and go to the kitchen and not come back. And so there was a whole cliffhanger thing there. And so TV has influenced me a great deal. Film has influenced me. I remember the first time I wrote a script that was a 3-hour script. It didn't get made, but would have been a 3-hour movie. And they were like, this is way too long. And I had no way to cut it down. So going back to the 6 books here, it is a question of I get to 80,000 to 100,000 is where I comfortably live. Okay. So when I go into something that goes into 150,000 and I'm still not talking, I know that one book needs to split to 2. Let's say and then I go back to the new number 1 and start and realize this book is going to split on me again because no publisher is going to publish something that's 150,000 or more words at all, unless it may be science fiction. But even that, we're pushing our luck. So my choices of numbers of episodes, if I'm doing a TV show, or numbers of book volumes, if we're doing publishing, comes down a lot to word count. And if you are a total pantser, which nothing makes me, I can just sit down. I mean, we're having a conversation. I'm rambling on and on and on, right? And not giving you a chance to talk. But I sit and type, and I can just type out words and scenes and conversations and stuff like crazy. And part of it is because working with live television or structured television, there is a deadline. You got to get those things out there. Weekly TV series, you got to type them fast and get them out because you got to get the production done, the whole thing. So writing quick is not my thing. Writing short is really an issue for me. And it helps. You can write if you just let yourself go and write like I really do, like I want to do, then you can write a tome. This is a true story. I was taking my son to preschool many years ago, and I got this idea for a short story. And so I started writing it, and this short story, which I knew was going to be 5,000 words, ended up being 375,000 words. So I wrote a 375,000 short story. And it's everybody who's looked at it has said that they really, really like this story. But there's no way anybody's going to publish, a book that long. So how do we divide it up? And this is the problem that you run to if you're just a total pantser by trade. You go, it's one continuous story. There's really no place to break it up. And I've had that story sitting in my hard drive for a couple of years now, trying to figure out how do I break this up. And there's no way that I know of to break it up. And so I go back to that storyboard thing where I'm always constantly going, I've got a vessel, I've got a poem, I've got a sonnet, or I've got a short story, or I've got a novella, or I've got a novel. I've got a 22-minute TV episode for a 30-minute show. I've got a 48-minute TV something for a 1-hour show. And I run that basically mathematically. You wonder for a writer, what's math? What's this class in math ever going to do? It's going to keep me confined to my body where I can meet, because my job as a storyteller and a developer of storytellers is to give my production company or my publisher or the network something that they can use. And so my loyalty is making sure I bring it in on time, on budget, and on word count, no matter what it happens to be. So that's pretty much where my thinking comes in. My first love, I just love to sit down and write. But in a practical world, you have to look ahead unless you just want to spend, it's anti-productive for me to spend time trying to break down 375,000 words into multiple volumes, as opposed to thinking ahead of time, how am I going to get that climaxes in and that ultimate climax cliffhanger that's going to bring you back after you go to the refrigerator. So that's it comes down. It comes down to what can, a quart mason jar can hold this much, but a gallon jug can hold this much. And there's no way you're going to get the gallon into that quart. And so if you know it before you start pouring, you don't have the mess of it all going all over the kitchen table, So.
Well, your subconscious, something needed to write that 375,000 word tome, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
my agent asked, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, it's up to 200,000." Well, there's no way we can sell anything 200,000, but no, this is a story that needs to be told, and that's what I referenced when I first started talking to you. I have written so much that's never seen the light of day simply because it's stories that need to be told. Whether
yeah,
anybody needs to read them is a completely different matter. Whether it's
right.
worth anybody else reading it is a completely different matter. It's a story that I need to tell. And I think that's the essence of what writers really would find their most zen, their most happiness if they went that route rather than worried about all this other stuff that you can't control. Where it's my mantra, and I tell people that work with me all the time, there's the three things. There's the things you have 100% control over. And there's the things you have only partial control over. And there's the things you have no control over. The ones you have no control over, don't even think about them. Don't even let it get in your mind. The ones you have partial, you can focus on them to some degree. And then the things you have total control over, of course, those are the easy ones. I have total control. I can sit down and write. I have limited control on whether I write something that is going to resonate with you, Julie.
Mm-hmm.
So I concentrate in that little paradigm on the fact that I promise you, I'm going to serve you, Julie, to the best of my ability, but it is going to come down to the best of my ability,
Mm-hmm.
what I can do. And that's where I focus my time, not on the publication, but on the trying to serve you, trying to serve the production company, trying to serve whoever I'm trying to serve rather than concentrate on all of the other things that I cannot control. And that's why I say I think writers, if they came to it with just, this is a story that needs to be told. I don't even know where it would go. I don't even know if anybody wants to buy it. But this is a story that needs to be told because it's important to me. And that
Mm-hmm.
is something that I have control over. And so that's the world that I like to live in because I feel more comfortable there because I love having control over my life. And if control is being peacefully writing, not feeling the stress of anything else after that, to me, that piece is worth everything.
Well, your passion for the writing is contagious, and it's such an important thing for us all to listen to and to hear. Is that's what you can do? You can write. The rest of it, I love that analogy. I mean, publishing is a whole different journey. You can control your writing. That's it. The
Yeah,
rest of it, you can be
you can
part of.
and saying that again, those three things I said, you can control that you write. So that's
Mm-hmm.
when I show up. You have partial control over how well you write or how the ideas you've
Mm-hmm.
chosen, how they resonate, all of that. And you do the best you can with that. And then the rest of it, you let it go.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's fabulous. Well, we could obviously talk about writing forever, but I want to talk about Killer Nashville. You, what called you to create this conference, which is a writers' conference, which is a gift to writers. There are a few. I live in New England. New England Crime Bake's another one where the goal is for writers to get together and learn and leave exhausted but fulfilled. Right. But it's a lot of work to pull these things off. What called you to start Killer Nashville?
And I love producing, so it's a lot of work. Yeah, but it's also a labor of love. And that really it comes down to that. It's like writing. If I didn't really enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it. Right. And so it was 2006. This is our 20th year
Wow.
in existence. And they said, "What are you going to do for your 20th year? You got to do something great. You got to do something." And I said, once again, that thing you can control, I said, I'm going to do this 20th year with the same intention that I did the 19th year.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to make it the best I can possibly do. But I had come off the road. I was on tour as an actor for 3 years straight, living out of hotel rooms for 3 years straight, going from city to city. And everyone was all my writer friends were trying to get me to come to different events that were going over. And I had a 3-year-old son. I mean, I still have him, but he's not 3 years old anymore. He's this big hulking guy now, but he was 3 years old. And I really, to use that analogy of John Lennon, I had decided that I had come to a point where I was going to hang my guitar over the bed and just be a dad.
Yeah.
And I still wrote. I've got tons of pictures of a pillow on my lap with my son Ellis laying across there as a little baby, like drinking a bottle with me typing, because I've always worked at home. My whole life I've worked at home. And I started my first production company in 1976. So I have been working independently on my own at home ever since, my whole life. I don't know anything differently. And even when I worked at Universal before, the working remotely thing, it worked out to some degree because they knew my cycle, and as long as I got the work done and things. But I was tired of traveling, and so everybody said, all these friends said, can you come to this? And they're spread out all over the country, right? And I said, there is not, other than another conference in Florida, there's not a conference really in the Southeast that focuses on crime fiction, thriller fiction. We have like the Southern Festival of Books, which is incredible, but not a writers conference teaching people. And I felt like the area was underserved. And I said to all of them, I said, instead of me coming there, why don't you come here to me? Because it's important to me. This is insight into me. It is important to me for me to tell my children a story every single night before they go to bed. And I've got a kid in college, and I've got a daughter going into 9th grade. And in all this time, I have never missed a night telling these kids a story, because that's just one of the things that's important to me. And I think they're much better because of different stories. And sometimes I run out of stories and have to make them up. And some better than others, but I'm like my grandmother, right? Some of them are true, some of them are sort of true, some of them are not true at all, but I'm struggling here trying to keep this audience alive, And so I said, why don't you guys come here? Let's just have a party. And that is what we did. And in the first year, I was completely surprised. We had about 70 people show up, and we had Carol Higgins Clark was our guest of honor and our speaker. It turned out so well that they said, and I even called, I said, let's make this educational. So I contacted people I knew with the FBI, the TUBI, the CIA, and the local law enforcement, both sheriffs and then city precincts, and said, hey, we're doing this. We're having some crime writers. You want to come and give a presentation on the things that really drive you crazy when you're reading a crime novel and the author gets wrong. And they showed up, and everybody seemed to love that. And then Dan Royce, he said, why don't we just have a mock crime scene like I set up for the training the TBI agents? And I said, that would be wonderful. So we added that. So all of that came together, and it was just a really, really fun weekend. And they said, I think we should do this again. And so that was 20 years ago, 2006. And it has just since grown beyond that. But here, I had been involved in starting for arts councils and stuff, small writers conferences, but these were small, big fish in a small aquarium events, right? I wanted something because it the younger people listening to this are going to go, what? I thought, how'd you live without the internet? But the internet and stuff was just now coming out, and I saw a way to make a connection with people around the world. And nothing gets me excited like experiencing a new culture, experiencing new ideologies and frames of mind. And I said, let's create, if we're going to do this, guys, let's create something that is international in scope, because how much more enriched are we going to be if we bring in people who are not like us, who are different from us, and we get their experiences on storytelling. I think of like Paul Simon, who, his whole experience in music is like experiencing different cultures and incorporating that into what they're doing. I thought, well, can't we do the same thing for literature rather than just, the literature we're writing? What's going on in Africa? What is going on in Russia now? What is going on in Europe? What are the French doing? All of that together, because every culture writes differently.
Mm-hmm.
They tell stories differently. It's the way they phrase it. It's the things that are important that they want to include in the narration of the story. And you bring all those together, and you start getting all of this wonderful stuff that just expands your mind. And so we set it up for that, and that became our little niche that was going in. And we had, I feel very proud that Killer Nashville has been on the forefront of a lot of different movements. We in the way we do our awards programs, we're looking for the best book, not the best first audio book or hardcover or paperback or first novel or whatever. It's like we're looking for the best book, and then for people who at the time, I mean, we've gone through some really crazy transitions in this business, that we've gotten to see. And there's self-publishing, independent publishing, small presses popping up and all of that. And Killer Nashville has incorporated that into our curriculum so that people know they have options. And you know what? You may have a voice or a perspective or a lifestyle or something that is not going to put you in the big five, but there's a place for you. And it's Killer Nashville's job to help you find that place, because, and not find that place just locally, because we have the reach now, find your people wherever they are, whether they're in France or Japan. And so we have people coming in from all over the world every single year, and they bring with them trinkets to give to all of us to learn. And then they pick up on things, American storytelling, around the world. Look at the film industry, look whatever. American storytelling is the standard of commercial storytelling, but that doesn't mean we can't take standard commercial and up it into something that's transcendent beyond the genres and stuff itself, but something that's transcendent. And we get that not always. I mean, sometimes things will pop in our heads, but most of it is experiential, of getting it from someone else, seeing what someone else is doing, and then having the open mind to be able to go, that's not normal. That's not what I normally do. And maybe that makes me feel uncomfortable, but you know what? It struck a chord in me, and I need to sit up and take notice about what that is. And so we built Killer Nashville around all of those new innovations, new ways of writing, new avenues of publishing, new avenues of recognition, new audiences, and bring them all together in a way that enhances everybody in the room, and everybody in the room is welcome. And we keep our numbers, as you know, we keep our numbers smaller. I think it's like 480 people are all we can have,
which is great.
We sell out every year. I rent embassy suites. Everybody is in a fishbowl. You have to pass everybody. I have told from the very beginning when we did it, I don't want a caste system where we've got our published writers and then our wannabes, and so everybody's equal. If you come to Killer Nashville, you have to be willing to give your business card and your contact information, no matter who you are. And you've got to help that next generation, because without that help, I would never have been able to have the life that I got to enjoy. It came from help. It didn't come from my talent. Talent might have helped, right? I mean, you got to have some talent in there, and you've got to have dedication. But I think you really got to be hungry. That's going to be a big factor. But you've got to have those people who are helpful. And I really think people coming in just really need to know that it's a process. It is an apprenticeship that you are going through. And, the film industry is full of rules and unions and guilds, of which I'm a member as well, but not at the time starting out. And I went to a director that I admired, and I said, I really want to do what you're doing. Can I watch? And he said, not really there. And I said, I can do anything. I can make coffee. I will make sure you always have coffee. I will do whatever it takes to get done. And he said, we just really don't have it in the budget to have another assistant. I said, I don't even want to be paid. I've got my regular job that I have, and all I want to do is just show up and learn. And that's payment enough for me. And he looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. But I was hungry, and I was very hungry. I was in between, frankly, at the time, living in my car. And that's how much I love storytelling. I had my Chevy Nova with the rusted out back seat. It was like Fred Flintstone. It was really funny when people get into the car. There were floor mats. You get into the car, and I sometimes wouldn't tell people. I wouldn't go down the road like this, but I wouldn't tell people what it was. And they put their feet on the floor mat, and their feet go down to the pavement at the bottom. And then I'd say, "Okay, everybody, start walking." They're like, "What?" But I had my little Chevy Nova, and I had a typewriter, a non-electric, just manual typewriter, and I had a sheath of paper, and I felt as long as I had that, then I had a reason to continue. And I think people just saw that and felt, this guy's he's really trying to do that. And, I don't come across as a stalker or anything, but, I had things where I would go going back to Hollywood. There's a story that, Spielberg just kind of went and set up an office in there. And I thought, here I am in Los Angeles trying to break into screenwriting. Why don't I just go visit Spielberg? So I did. I went over to Amblin, which is right there on the side by the river on that. It's a river with no water in it, but the river over there on the side of Universal. And through that experience, I ended up working inside Universal and then being tutored by Lou Wasserman, who was the very guy that set up an office. I don't know if you know who Lou Wasserman is, but he set up the whole thing with Spielberg and stuff. And so all these wonderful opportunities just opened up because I was hungry. I was willing to throw myself out there. I was really always willing to admit, I don't know how good I am. I'm as good as I am, and that's all I am. Kind of like Popeye, and I am what I am. And but I'm happy to try. And then so Killer Nashville, the people that come to Killer Nashville, they have similar kind of stories of how they went through to get to where they are, and they remember what it was like. They remember being hungry, And, once going through the depression, you always live in the depression, right? So they know. And so I've been so proud of everybody who just comes and gives back, creating the next generation of writers, because it is incredibly vital that we keep ideas and points of view, even if they differ from us, alive and in the culture and in the consciousness, so people can experience, because I'm a big believer in the Socratic thing of thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. And all of that happens constantly with the new information and new experiences and the new people that we meet. And so all of that is fuel for a writer's fire,
Well, I love your passion, and I'm hearing it. I also, these 20 years, as you pointed out, have been such a change in the publishing world, in readers, in passions and everything else. And I love the international and getting that lens. But as you pointed out, it's also within within the United States. There's so many different ways of telling a story. Somebody who came from Appalachia is going to have a different point of view on the world even now than I am, having grown up in New England. And so embracing that and reading diversely and talking to people is such a gift and such an important part of keeping this community strong.
Well, and we talk about, even somebody says, some of your stuff sounds like it's got you're a Southern writer, and I'm really, what does that mean? Because even in Tennessee, there are 3 Tennessees, and each one of those has their own style. Yeah. So I am an East Tennessee writer. I'm not a Georgia writer. I am not an Alabama writer. I am a East Tennessee writer. I don't write like the same person who comes from Memphis. That's not my experience. So we've got all this. I would say, we've got 50 states of writing, but no, in Tennessee, we've got 3. So multiply that. We've got at least 150 states of, sub-states of writing to be able to pull that off. Plus communities. I grew up rural. I'm here in an area outside of Nashville, and then there's Nashville, and there is no comparison between the culture between the two, and we're 15 minutes away from each other, but there is no comparison. And so all of these different things, all these different areas that you were talking about are valid, that we've each got all of that. And I just really think you got to open your mind. I mean, I don't want to sound like Timothy Leary or whatever, but you got to open your mind and go, see all of these, experience all of that, because you do bring all of that home. I mean, Walter Mosley has been, a guest of honor at Killer Nashville, and I'm a big fan of his work. And I read. I'm interviewing him for another project I'm doing, so I'm reading some of his books again, and he writes a completely different style than I write, but I gain so much from his storytelling that I go back in the next day when I write and think, okay, Walter did it like this. Let me see how I can throw that in. So it's the however many states we have and however many countries we have. I mean, it's just all incredible to me. Just the wealth that's there. I just hate the fact that every day we kind of like it ticks off part of our ticket, and I would love to experience it all before it comes to that very, very end. And that's one of the wonderful things about being a writer, is that it doesn't have to come to an end until if you've really got that passion and love of story, it doesn't come to an end until you mentally are not able to achieve that anymore. I remember Donald Bain, who wrote the Murder, She Wrote series. I don't know if you know Donald
lovely
Bain.
Man.
And Coffee, Tea, and Me, which was, his kind of like thing that put him on the map. But Murder, She Wrote, he was very proud of Murder, She Wrote. And I remember putting his arms around me fatherly, and saying it's, we are so blessed, Clay, that we live in a profession that we love and we can continue doing for as long as we want to do it until we die. And I was, how blessed are we to be that way? And I think every person who's got a story and who's got that passion needs to be allowed that vehicle to be able to get that out. And I think that's what Killer Nashville has tried to do. And that's what I'm so proud of about Killer Nashville. I'm not proud of what I've been the figurehead of Killer Nashville, but I also worked at Disney, and you had Walt, who was the figurehead of Disney, but Walt never once saw himself as the guy in charge. It was always Team Disney, and it's still Team Disney. And I think that it's all we're all one big team, and we all bring something else to the picture. And what I hope with all of these people bringing things in is that even through the most dastardly things that we read or see, as well as the beautiful things we read or see, that we have that synthesis where stories and people's stories, even stories of people we don't even like, stories of people who are different, stories of people we don't even understand, it all comes together for this common world good. Maybe I'm a leftover hippie because the hippies were still going on when I was a kid. Maybe and they swam. I used to sit on the railroad trestle as a little kid, swinging my legs, watching all these naked hippies swimming in the Chickamauga Creek down by our farmland. And maybe I've got a little bit of that the age of Aquarius maybe is not just a musical that is no longer remembered, that I still hold hope that all of these ideas expressed by people were willing to give an opportunity to share those ideas can open up a world where it's going to be much different for our children, for us as we get older. John Lennon again, you can say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one, right? So one day maybe the world will join us and we'll be one.
Well, I think that get to dream I certainly share. And I think we're going to leave it there because your passion is contagious. You've given people so much to think about. And I loved hearing about your creative life. And I also love that, your contributions to the genre and to the community, which are so important. And again, for folks, find a writers. If you're even whispering to yourself, I want to write crime fiction, even if you haven't told anyone in the world, find a conference, a writers' conference to go to. Again, from New England, Tennessee, they're all over the country. You'll find one, and because it will change your life. You just sort of reclaiming your space and finding your path and meeting other people. And you leave that weekend a changed person.
I'm something else. I realized that, and I've been recording Killer Nashville for the 20 years, and then I've people have been, once again, generosity always surprises me with people. People are so generous. If we all just are, just ourselves and not pretense, but people are very generous. And so other conferences have given me materials that we put on the Balanced Writer that you referenced there, which is a streaming platform, because I think the thing that always bothered me with Killer Nashville and other conferences is that the people who need this the most, this little kid in Appalachia that has no money, right. The first clothes I got to buy that were brand new was when I was 14, because everything else was hand-me-downs up to that point from other people. And so you have those people all over who don't have the money. So I opened up and created the streaming platform, The Balanced Writer, because the people who need to be there at these conferences
may not be able
are not
to.
the ones that can afford it.
Yeah.
And so, so I said, when we were thinking of putting it together, I said, let's make this a continuation of Killer Nashville, so that if we can't bring them to the mountain, we're going to bring the mountain to them, into their living room. And so for those out there, I think networking and one-on-one FaceTime, you will know, is invaluable. So if you can go to a conference, any conference, a local conference, a conference you travel to, it doesn't matter. Go and share with, like you're saying. And all of these conferences are excellent. All of these conferences are good, and you're going to get wonderful things out of them. So I say, whichever one you want to go to, you didn't make a wrong decision. Go to that one. But if you can't do that, don't let it hold you back, because there are things like the Balanced Writer out there that offer, I deliberately offer it cheap. My goal is to be able to open it up free for everybody. Open up Killer Nashville, and I have never, in 20 years, I have not been able to do that at this point. But I feel like before it's all over, I will achieve that we can open it up and give it free to people to come. We can open up the Balanced Writer and give it free for people to come. We publish Killer Nashville magazine every month, and it's free for everybody, because I thought there are people who cannot afford $20 to buy a subscription, but they need this information, right? And so there are resources out there aplenty if you'll just reach out and take advantage of them. And do that. But if you can go, like you said, if you can go to a conference, there's nothing that beats sitting across the table, as you know, having a conversation with somebody who shares the same passion and ambitions and loves that you do, and you come away from that just completely changed. And that's what it's all about. Life is about that. Life is about change. And so I'm with you totally.
Well, and that's an excellent point. I mean, socioeconomically, conferences are not inexpensive, but again, it's such a great point. And check again, all of the links are in the show notes for this. But library events, go to somebody's book launch and talk to the person next to you. Just find your people.
And going to book launches, seriously, we know what book launches are like now. We know what they used to be, but we know what they are like now. These authors who are there launching their book, they want somebody to talk to, because a lot of times they don't. And so you can go show up and have an hour conversation, and then go get a drink or go get a snack or something afterwards. If you don't come across as a crazy, afterwards you can go out and, down the street to something and spend another 2 hours chatting about writing. So take advantage, and bookstore events are free. You know?
No, it's such a great point. Well, your enthusiasm is contagious, and I appreciate the conversation very much. Well,
can I say thank you so much to Sisters in Crime for all that you guys have done for us over the years. You've been supportive from the very start in growing Killer Nashville to what it is. And we share your mission, and we are happy to be affiliated, and have always just been amazed at your generosity and your support in trying to help get the message out. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you to Sisters in Crime for everything that you've done.
Well, you're very kind. And, it is the crime writing community is a great one.
And guess who? You haven't mentioned this.
I was going to say.
Guess who is going to be our John Singenthaler Legends Award winner this year? None other than
the great Sarah Paretsky. And she mentioned that when at Left Coast Crime, she's excited about it. And she she's amazing as a writer, as a human being, even more so. And in this kind of group, she's a really lovely, approachable person. So I
Yeah, and we're giving her plenty of time to talk. And she cautioned me. She said, I have opinions and I am going to say them. And I said, and I value your opinions and everybody needs to hear them.
Yeah,
So,
well, and she is she had the room of tears in tears. So she's an amazing person. She's one of the founders of Sisters in Crime, the first president. We're turning 40 next year, and going to be celebrating that for a while. So
and she has done so much, not just even Sisters in Crime, just for writers in general, for underserved people in communities, getting their voices out. She has done so much as a pioneer of making sure that the missions that I think probably Sisters in Crime and Killer Nashville share together, the missions are there, came from people like Sarah Paretsky. So we're so honored to have her this year.
Well, it's wonderful. She's wonderful, and it's going to be a great time. Thank you so much, Clay. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you for the opportunity. So good to meet you.
Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.